Hi, guys. It's Pastor Kerry here, and I wanted to come and share some thoughts about resolving problem relationships. Every once in a while we find ourselves in that situation where one of the important relationships in our life, whether it's the relationship with our employer or employees, the relationship with our parents or kids, the relationship with our spouse, whoever it might be, our friend, is that we got to figure out how we're going to resolve that problem relationship. And I want to talk a little bit about that today, but what I'd like to do is bring in my guest here, and we can have a chance to chat a little bit about that. And so, Karen, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you. Good to
Good
be
to
here.
it's good to see you. You know,
Yeah, thanks.
so what I want to encourage you to do, Karen, is just ask me any questions as we go along, and we'll see if we can kind of sort this out together. And
Okay.
what I would like to do is talk about this relationship versus that relationship. And I think that that's where people get hung up in
Mm-hmm.
resolving their relationship problems. So
Mm-hmm.
let me
Yeah.
explain what I mean by that.
Okay.
Is that oftentimes we find ourselves in a situation where and this is what I have now in this relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and what I want is what we had before, and so I want that. I don't want this,
Yeah.
and oftentimes that, well, more than oftentimes, you just can't go back
Mm-hmm.
and get that.
Mm-hmm.
So the key is to figuring out how you can have a healthy relationship in this relationship. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I told somebody recently is I said, I think that when you get married and you say for better or for worse,
Hmm.
what you should be really realizing is this is probably the best that it's going to be.
now,
Yeah.
I'm going to take exception with that because the best that it can be is probably, yes, there's a lot of good
Well,
things
not
about the
can
start
be,
of.
but it is usually.
Yeah, but I want to take exception with that, and the reason why is because a mature love is not an immature love
Mhm.
is not is not better than a mature love,
Yeah.
and but and oftentimes immature love is not fire tested love,
Yeah.
you
True.
know, and
Yeah.
so
What do you
yeah.
think? In sickness and in health, you're probably your
Hmm.
healthiest when you first get married. Like,
Yeah,
well, richer and poorer. I don't know. You're probably not going to be that rich when you first get married, usually.
you never know. Marriages go through seasons.
Yeah.
And my wife and I, we've been married now for we celebrated our 50th anniversary this year, and so we're walking towards 51. And
Mm-hmm.
in that, there have been various health challenges along the way.
Yeah.
And so, would I want that relationship that we had when we were both 20 or
Mm-hmm.
24 years old? Sure. But now that we are both in our 70s, I have to figure out how I'm going to respond in a healthy way to this relationship
Yeah.
that I have. And,
Yeah.
and I'm convinced that one of the things that we have to do throughout our relationship journey is that we have to mourn the loss of that relationship.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I also think we come into a relationship with so many expectations.
Hmm.
And yeah, like you do have to mourn not just that relationship, but the relationship you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is true not only with husbands and wives, but it's also true with parents and children. I was talking with a couple here recently who have a complicated relationship with their adult child.
Hmm.
And when you start off as a parent, that we all, a good parent is that
Hmm.
we start off with these hopes and dreams and these expectations about what being a parent is going to be like.
Right.
And then reality hits. And God is constantly reminding us that we're not in control.
Right. Yeah.
When, you know, and while we try to exert our control, over that toddler, and hopefully what we're doing is that we are guiding them with discipline rather than trying to control their lives,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
helping them to make wise choices. But then they go through, the preteen years and the teenage years. You're kind of in that teenage space right now.
Hmm. Very much so.
Yeah. How about for
Yeah.
you? Let me just ask you this question: Was there ever a time in your parenting that you had to mourn that relationship that you had with your kids,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
had to adapt to this relationship?
Yeah. I would say when we moved and Cambria was just about 2,
Mm-hmm.
and so Jack was 4.5. I started getting rid of the things that they didn't need anymore or use anymore, like
Mm-hmm.
all those baby things. And that was kind of hard for me because I was like grieving. We're done with the baby stage.
Yeah.
My kids are never gonna like be that little holding them like that. And I would say there's other times where, like I think also going into the teenage years where they want to be more independent. They want to do things their way, and
Mm-hmm.
having to go like, man, they used to be so cute. They
What
used to be
happened to
so
you?
nice. They used to talk to me like I was their mom, not like I was some horrible person.
Yeah, they used to talk to me like I was their hero,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
now they talk to me like I'm their zero.
Yeah, I'm the villain in the story now.
Yeah, yeah, you
Uh,
know. So when it comes to this whole issue of this and that, so
mhm,
that relationship versus this relationship, I think the pivot point oftentimes is there's some disappointment
mhm,
that characterizes the relationship. Now, the disappointment may be circumstantial.
yeah.
For instance, your kids have grown older,
Mhm,
and there's nothing you can do about that. You can't put a brick on their head, you know, and hope to freeze time,
yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
so sometimes, those circumstances aren't necessarily bad,
Mhm,
but they're different,
yeah.
you know.
So what do you recommend you do when you're in this?
Yeah. Well, I think that, and I want to talk about that in just a moment. So let's put a pin in that, and we'll
All
come
right.
back. So your question is, what do you recommend when you're in
Mhm,
this
mhm,
missing the that, right?
right.
Okay. Sometimes it's circumstantial. There's nothing you can do about it.
Mhm,
For instance, right now where I'm at in my relationship with my wife is that there was a time when we both were physically healthy,
Yeah.
but we don't have that time anymore. And so sometimes it's a matter of it's circumstantial that you have no control over. Sometimes it's an issue with respect to unhealthy, or sometimes it's circumstantial. Other times it's dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I was talking with some parents today, and they were telling me about friends of theirs whose adult children are drug addicts.
Mm.
And so that drug addicted child is acting in a dysfunctional way.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are making relational choices. For instance, my wife didn't make any choice to face the physical challenges that she is currently facing.
Right.
But sometimes people make choices
Yeah.
that reflect dysfunctional behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about how to respond to hurt. And I think that there are at least 4 essential components to walk through this. And I think that it all starts with grief.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best definitions that I've heard about grief is that it's the emotional process of accepting reality.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could reframe that definition and put it this way, is that grief is the emotional process of letting go of that and accepting this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I think that we can be very intentional about grieving, and that's one of the things that I like to do when I work with people. Sometimes, another one is a forgiveness, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly when there's dysfunctional behavior involved, that's when I need to exercise forgiveness.
Yeah.
In order to move past, in order for me to adapt to this in a healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
respond to this in a healthy way. So obviously I don't need to forgive my wife for the physical problems that she has,
Right.
but I do have to grieve the change that we no longer have that relationship. We have this relationship now.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other item, and we can unpack these a little bit more in more detail, because I want to wrap up in the next couple minutes. But the other item is communication,
Mm-hmm.
and if you think about it, that oftentimes when we are communicating with our children or our spouses or others, and our communication becomes dysfunctional or negative, blaming, problematic, is that it's because we are really kind of like we're protesting against that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're protesting that. I've been working with a couple where there was infidelity in the relationship, and their communication patterns are extremely dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to help them move into healthier communication habits.
Mm-hmm.
But that dysfunction in their communication is driven by their protest against the that. That they're losing the that. They wanted that relationship that they had. They wanted the relationship before the affair. They wanted the relationship before the pain and the hurt. But now we have this relationship, and so there's a lot of protest that's going on, and a lot of blame, and a lot of resentment, and so on and so forth. So grieving our losses is essential, and people think they know what grief is about, but I think that most people don't. Most people. Forgiving our hurts is essential. Communicating well is essential, and if you don't know how to communicate well, you can learn how to do that. But you'll never learn how to do that as long as you're protesting, as long as you're stuck in protest.
Yeah.
And then finally is setting healthy boundaries. I asked this couple today about their friends with drug-addicted children, and that they finally have gotten to the place where they're able to help their children in a better way by setting appropriate boundaries. You know? Some people are not addicted to drugs. Some people are addicted to protest. Some people are addicted to resentment. Some people are addicted to fantasy. That. You know what I'm saying? They're addicted to the that, and they can't let go of it. And so, but I believe it's always possible. I believe it's always possible to have a healthy relationship with anyone. But really, in order for us to have that healthy relationship, we have to learn how to adapt to this. So, any thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah. I mean, well, I had a couple thoughts, but I think I lost them. I don't know.
That's what happens at your age. Well, I'm grateful for you spending some time with us, and I hope that what we've talked about was also a blessing to others. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Stay on the line, Karen, and we'll come back and talk to you once we're done here, okay?
All right.
All right. Hey, friends, let's see. I want to get to that slide. There we go. Hey, friends, I appreciate you spending some time with us today as we talk about this and that, this relationship versus that relationship, and how to navigate those transitions effectively. And so I hope that you will join us whenever we have these broadcasts, and oftentimes maybe catch the replay. That's one of the simplest things to do. But share that with your friends. This is all part of our outreach, of our Beyond Betrayal program. And you can find that Beyond Betrayal program on Facebook at beyondbetrayal.org. So that's Facebook. That's what it says there on Facebook. It's beyondbetrayal.org. So that's it for now. I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.